my friend Marianne Hickman. She has risen from a really hard place in her life to do some amazing things. Just so I get this right, I'm going to read this. You are an international public speaker, influencer, sales professional, and are now an executive director of a multi-million-dollar sales organization.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
It's really fun.
And you have 6 little kids.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about your life. I know we spoke a little bit about this, but you've been through some hard stuff. It wasn't like you just kind of were handed all this.
No.
Okay, tell me a little bit about your life.
Okay, so I don't know how far back you want to go, but I associate a lot with my family, and I think that comes from being raised in a large family, or what would be considered
How big was your
large,
family?
10 kids.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Where do you fall in that?
I'm the last baby.
Oh, wow.
Very end, tail end. So, my parents are the same age as my husband's grandparents, kind of thing. And as I went through life, it was fascinating to be considered not by name, but by everyone's relation to me. So when I went through school, like, oh, you're Ruth's sister, or you're Caroline's sister, or you're Andrew's sister. And there was never any really self-identity.
Yeah.
And I followed in that trail. So I, went through high school, was like, okay, let's follow the society standard. Let's go to college. Let's incur a bunch of student debt, move out of the country, not out of the country, out of the state, move away from mom and dad. And I bought this little condo and started raising my family here, right? And when I got married, I skipped my senior prom to go to my wedding.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you got married young.
Would not recommend. 1 star.
So you were still in high school.
Yeah, I was engaged in high school.
Wow.
Yeah. And so there was a lot of obstacles. I think there's a lot of obstacles that I didn't know I was experiencing because I thought it was just normal.
Yeah.
And we went paycheck to paycheck, and there was student debt. And my ex-husband at the time, he went through the 11 jobs in the first 10 years of our marriage.
Whoa.
And that was really hard to watch. My parents were never very affluent. I didn't learn my money thing from them. And it all culminated in this one moment when I don't know if you've ever felt the weight of financial crush.
Oh, yeah.
You have all this debt, you're paycheck to paycheck. I remember getting the late notice on my mortgage one time. And
you guys had kids at this point?
Yeah, we had 3 kids at this point.
Wow.
And I dropped to my knees and I said, listen, I don't have anywhere else to go. I worked at a bookstore at the time, and I saw this plaque on the wall that says, people drop to their knees when they have nowhere else to go, Abraham Lincoln. And I was like, I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
So I was praying, and I said, I need someone to come into my life that can teach me about money. Or I need you to send me a $100,000 loan. God.
Either one.
So either one will work. And as you can imagine, he didn't drop $100,000 on my front door.
Weird.
That's so it's so strange. It's what I wanted. But he put someone in my life within a year that I latched onto.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen right away. So over the course of that, the job rotation and not being able to afford things, we got on EBT food stamps, and we got on our church welfare, and we got on the heat assistance program, and we got on WIC, and that involved a lot of poking and prodding. I had to take my kids and myself in to get drug tested so I could get food certificates to go to the store and pay for food.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we're having more kids.
It's so humbling too.
Oh my gosh. It was, I cannot tell you what it felt like to be in line at the store with my food coupons and then my WIC card, and have someone who I judged, but behind me in line, who looked better off than I was. And the level of guilt that I had that said, your taxes are probably paying for my groceries.
That's so interesting. I've never heard that perspective when you say that you felt guilt.
Yeah.
For that, because you totally just reminded me of this scenario. This was a few years back. I even posted this on social media because I felt so guilty myself. I was in line at a grocery store. It was right during the holidays. I had a baby in my cart plus other kids. And the girl in front of me was taking forever. And it was only for a few things. And I'm watching every other line around me going so fast. And my baby is screaming. And you know that stress when your baby's screaming.
Nothing else matters.
Oh, and you're just like, oh my, get me out of this scenario, like so fast. And I'm like, okay, I can't go get another line because I don't know. Then she's going to be done. And I'll be like, oh, what'd I just do? But, and then she asked the person at the cash register, oh, I got the wrong one. I didn't hear the conversation, but it was something about her getting the wrong item. So they had to go back and find the right one. And I remember feeling so annoyed. I was so annoyed that I just was like, I couldn't help but stare like, what is happening right now? I just was so mad about my baby screaming. I'm exhausted. We got other kids running around. I'm like, don't touch that. You can't touch that. And I feel so guilty. This is so embarrassing to even admit, but she turned around and looked at me and she goes, I'm so sorry. And I was so mad that I was just like, I couldn't even say, oh, it's okay, like I normally would. I just was like,
Uh-huh.
I just stared. And then when the lady came back, she's like, okay, so that one works for, and it was either WIC or EBT or one of those things. She goes, so that one works for this. And I was like, oh, I felt my stomach just drop. Like I felt so sick. That guilt, I've never heard that perspective because I felt just this crushing guilt. I went in my car and started bawling with my kids still screaming because I was like, what a spoiled brat. Like here I am just like, hurry up. I don't care what your issue is. I've got my baby screaming until I realize, and I'm like, wow, like this mom is struggling. And I think she even had a kid with her too. Yeah, anyway, that's interesting to hear your perspective.
Well, everyone goes through their own stuff, right? We all get that tunnel vision. And that really struck me when I was on my knees praying for this person. I said, I feel like I'm dishonoring my potential. I feel like I was built for more. I feel like I was made for more.
Yeah.
And I'm embarrassed to be seen like this because I know it doesn't reflect what I'm capable of.
Wow. So you had that feeling at that moment?
Oh, yeah, several times. Every time I swiped that card, every time I had my little WIC book, because, I can't get a 20-ounce loaf of bread. I have to get the 16-ounce loaf of bread. And it can't be this brand. It has to be this brand. And it just...
Which is exactly what that girl's, oh.
It's what she was struggling with.
I feel so bad over that.
Oh, it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, it is so hard. And what a blessing that it is so hard because now in your life, when you look back, do you think you would have appreciated where you're at now had you not gone through that?
I've seen it firsthand, and people that are in this situation without having earned it, for lack of a better word, they don't appreciate it. I had a lady work for me a few years ago, and with huge respect to her, she was given what people would consider a silver spoon.
Yeah.
And her parents had pushed her out. She was in her 30s. And they said, guess what? You get to live on your own now. We're not going to fund you anymore. And I remember the first paycheck she got. She looked at me and she said, I don't know if this pays rent or buys a pair of shoes. And just didn't understand the value of money. And then got into a very self-destructive cycle that I think landed her in jail at some point. I don't know for sure, but had she been caught, that's where it would have landed her.
Wow.
And if I had to pick, I would pick what I went through.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. When you say someone came into your life, was it like a mentor?
Yeah. It was a friend of mine named Chris.
Okay.
And a lot of people know him. He's a big influencer out there.
Chris Crone.
Yeah. And he's Chris Crone when I'm speaking of his brand, right? But he's just Chris for me. I went to one of those, it felt like a Tupperware party. Where they're like, I smell a pitch coming.
Yeah.
My brother's like, this is a pre-retirement party. I'm like, what is a pre-retirement party?
They walk in the room and everyone starts clapping.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was like, this is weird.
Oh boy.
And so then I am shamelessly admitting that it was a really cheesy slideshow.
Yeah.
Pictures of goose eggs painted gold. And I was like, what is this? It's real estate, blah, blah, blah. But I have this internal, and I think everyone does to some degree, this internal energetic meter.
Yeah.
And I call it my energetic dipstick. And I take it out and I dip it in the room. And I read what I feel.
Yeah.
And when I met Chris, despite all the lack of marketing and lack of publicity, I just felt like there was integrity. And I was like, I'm going to latch. If this person really is everything they say they are, then heck yes, I'm going to put their number in my phone. Yeah. And I'm going to hang out with them until I find a reason not to. Yeah. Essentially. And I'm going to follow every step, do everything they say to do. And I went to I was a seminar junkie at the time. I went to his seminars. I went to other seminars.
Well, but hold on. So see, this is what I would love people to hear. When you say you were a seminar junkie, you didn't just, well, you did ask for $100,000, but you didn't just like wish something into your life. You're like, okay, I'm going to go out and learn. I'm going to work. I'm going to do what I can to figure out how to get myself out of this situation, get my family out of this situation. So you went to a bunch of seminars trying to just glean whatever you could from that.
Oh, I listened to every doTERRA pitch.
Wow.
I listened to all the seminars things, and I was dipsticking every time. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew what I was doing in a way. Yeah. I knew what I was looking for. Right. So when I went to one after one after one, I took all of the good things out of each one that I could find. But I really buckled down with this mentor. Wow. And I did what I had a hard time advising people to do. Yeah. And I put $25,000.
You followed the advice that you were being given? Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily. Oh, in fact, I contradicted
you had a hard time. Okay, I see.
So I put $25,000 on a credit card.
Yeah.
to be in this mentoring program. Now, that's not money I had. I actually went on a website, got more credit cards so I could do that.
Wow.
And I paid interest on those credit cards for 5 years.
Wow.
So I could be in that proximity. And I painted myself in this corner, and I said, if I give you 25 grand, you better believe I'm not letting go until I get what I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was no alternative.
Because you didn't have that money anyway.
I didn't have it. I borrowed it.
Yeah.
And I just became so relentless. And it all boiled down to I had to, in order to get where I wanted to go, I had to learn 2 skills on top of many others, but 2 foundational ones.
Okay.
One is mental mastery.
Okay.
The words that we use to create our reality are so important. If we understood the cost of a single negative thought, and we could map it out and understood what it cost us in dollars, in relationships, and all that, we would never say a negative word in our minds ever again.
Wow, that's powerful.
So that mental mastery became first, and that's an ongoing game. The second one was the ability to sell.
Yeah.
And people don't like hearing that. They don't. They're like,
Well,
oh,
you're always selling yourself,
We're
like
always selling.
in a very clean, good way.
Yeah, and when we think about it, when you are first born, your first pitch is a cry to your parents.
Yeah.
I need
love me,
food, or I'm going to make your life a
Yeah.
really exhausting experience, right?
Extortion, actually.
But we're always selling, and if we think we're not, we've just sold ourselves on the idea.
Yeah. This is really interesting. I was actually a sales trainer for 10 years.
Oh,
and so,
were you?
Yeah. And so it's really interesting to hear this, but even just from a self-mastery perspective of learning to sell no matter what you're doing. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I still have to do that.
Yeah.
To talk my kids into stuff all
Yeah.
the time or out of stuff all the time, all day, every day.
Yeah, that's all we
You would
do,
know.
especially as moms.
So when you say, what was your number one with your like mastering the words that are in your mind or the thoughts that are in your mind? What did you title that again?
Oh, mental mastery. is
Mental
what I call
mastery.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how does someone do that?
It takes a lot of work, and most people aren't willing to. I'll say that much, because we are trained to be in a comfort zone. We're not trained to look in the mirror. We're not trained to do our thoughts. In fact, I'm working with a client right now that her assignment every morning is to stare at herself in the mirror and say nice things. And she says it's the hardest thing she's ever done.
Oh, that's so sad.
Wild.
That is so sad.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's understanding and breaking down how the results in your life are a root cause of what you're starting from beneath. Meaning, if I have a result I don't like, that is the precipitant of an action that I took. And that action I took is a precipitant of a root belief that I have. So it starts by taking inventory.
Yeah.
At the end of your day, what did I like about my day? What did I not like about my day? What do I love in terms of my relationships? And what do I don't love? And what is the limiting belief or idea that surrounds what I don't like?
How does someone find out what their limiting belief is? I mean, because, sometimes it's subconscious or they're not even aware of it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And this is really easy. The first step is saying, what's the result I don't like, and why is it in my life?
And then kind of backtracking.
And then you backtrack, right? So we could use an example like weight. Weight is an easy one. A lot of people relate to health and fitness. If you're working with someone who's 100 pounds overweight, I lovingly refer to it as the fat suit, right? It's something that we put on. It's something that we wear over time. And you could ask them, what's the number one limiting belief that comes up for you when you think about your body? And they will start rattling off. Boom, 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 boom. I'm too fat. I'm too old. I'm too young. I don't love myself. All of these things will come up, and you can attack them one by one. And through neuroplasticity, replace the idea.
Explain neuroplasticity.
Okay, so the neuroplasticity basically means that our minds are not concrete.
Yeah.
Our lanes are they're learnable.
They're malleable.
Exactly. They're plastic. They're not static. They can learn things. So if you can understand where the idea originated, you can actually do a little bit of time travel, go back in time and talk yourself out of it, or sell yourself out of it, or replace it with a better idea. It requires practice.
Yeah.
It requires repetition, but it can be reversed. And that's what financially got me to where I was.
Okay, so speaking of that, tell me where you were compared to where you are now. Like, I want to hear how exactly. I know you met, Chris, and then, but what was the point where it's like you felt like something was totally different, and there were examples of it around you to prove that something was totally changing?
So I think that when you say that, there's 2 moments that come to mind for me.
Okay.
The first one is actually not a result of my circumstance, and I'll never forget this moment. I was driving north on I-15. You know where the overpass next to UVU is?
Totally.
And before that was there, it was under construction. I was driving in my Mazda MPV, right?
Yes.
My '01 car, which ended up later catching fire in my garage, but that's a whole other story.
That sounds like we need to hear that
It
story.
was
but yes.
crazy. So I'm driving in this car, and I've been mentoring for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. And and when I'm driving alone, especially, I love to think and use that as my think time. I don't always play music or books. I just
Right.
kind of let my mind do its thing. And I was frankly talking to God.
Yeah.
I like to put him in the passenger seat for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I do that a lot too, actually.
do you? Yeah.
Except most of the time when I'm driving, there's 6 kids and they're usually screaming.
Right?
When I'm alone, yes.
Yes. So this was one of those times, and I was thinking about trying on one of these ideas of what would life be like if I was already there, if I had already arrived. And you know that moment in Entangled, where we're in the boat at the end of the movie, and she's like, I'm kind of scared because what if I get everything I want? What's next?
Yeah.
Right? I had that moment, and I started to think about, in the words into my mind of, I did it. And my mind started to picture everything that meant. What does I did it mean? Well, my bank account has this $50,000 balance in it that I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
And I went through in my head. I opened the app on my phone in my mind and saw it and envisioned it. What does I did it look like in terms of health? Oh my gosh. Well, I lost a lot of body fat that I want to release and become toned and fit. And what does I did it in terms of relationships look like? Oh my gosh. Well, I have a relationship that's full of fidelity and life and vigor. And I started designing it with my health, my wealth, my personal power, and my spirituality. And these tears started to stream down my cheeks. Just full, so much gratitude that it leaked out my eyes.
Wow.
And then I turned to my passenger seat and I said, now what? And that's when I can identify when my life's mission was born. Because I struggled so hard for so long. I remember the struggle of finding babysitters when I had 2 minutes left to get to work and I still didn't know who was going to watch my kids. I have battled the people who unrighteously use the tool of money to tear apart families.
Wow.
And I said, my goal and my mission and purpose is to find the people on the planet who have the purest hearts possible and make them stupid wealthy. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So that they'll use that money for good.
That money needs them to get where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
There will be children who will be saved because good people have money.
Love it.
So that was the biggest turnaround for me. And then that came the mental mastery. And then the practicality sank in. I was at Chris's house one time hanging out, and he was on the phone with a prospective client. He just launched his YouTube channel and had people calling in, and he was taking the calls himself.
Yeah.
And he put the call on hold, and he looked at me and said, Marianne, if you can close this, I'll give you $100. And I was like,
done.
You want me to sell? I have seconds to decide. Okay, give me the phone. So I was like, $100 is on the line. Sure, talking to someone can give me $100. Let's try it.
Yeah.
And I closed them and got $100, and then I was like, I bet I could do that again.
Yeah.
And again and again and again. And
There's a high in sales.
yeah.
There really is.
It went into high-end products, and now I'm selling 5-6 figure items, and I run a sales floor of people that do the same thing, and it's so amazing. Every day at work, if I'm going to leave my kids, it's going to be for my life's mission.
For something that's worth,
If I'm going to leave, not abandon them, but if I'm going to leave the house.
Right.
So I get to live every day making good people wealthy. I interview and hire the best people because I want them to be wealthy. And by extension, every time they help someone, that person becomes wealthier.
Yeah.
And it's the coolest thing. I mean, you talk about results now. I've got this multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio. We moved into our dream home last year and started dreaming about the next home. And it's such a beautiful place of gratitude to not have money be the reason I do or don't do anything.
Yeah. That is so exciting to hear too. So what would you tell someone in practical terms? What are the first steps they could take today if they're really struggling to get out of kind of a downward spiral with debt or with just money in general?
Yeah. And it might sound counterintuitive, but the first thing I would tell them to do, and I do this with my clients, I tell them to purge.
Purge.
Physically and mentally.
Okay.
So I was working with a client of mine. She started about 9 weeks ago. I said, the first thing I want you to do before you can receive is empty your space. Because everything you have right now is taking up space in your mental bandwidth, and it's taking up space in your home.
So how does one do that?
I started with her. I said, I need you to get rid of 20 things a day. Literally
Actual items.
in pieces. Go through your house and pick up 20 things. If it's a hanger, if it's a piece of clothing that you never wear, if it's a sock, anything that's not bringing you joy, you need to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Because you have filled the vacuum of the universe, and there's no room for abundance to come in. So as they go through and get rid of the 20 things a day, I'm also having them write down their belief systems. And what are you learning along the way? What ideas are not serving you? We're going to purge the mind as well. You're going to list out the 20 limiting beliefs that come up for you. Anytime.
What if someone is not aware of what those limiting beliefs are? For example, like if someone, I don't know, I guess I'm thinking of this because last night I watched a Dr. Phil episode. But anyway, this guy truly believes that he is a prophet, but he lives on the streets and he's screwed people over. It's not like he's harmed people, we'll say.
I've met a couple of those types. It's wild.
So like someone like him, it'd be really hard for him to realize what his limiting beliefs are because he doesn't believe he has them.
Right.
So how do you narrow in on that?
Those people don't come into my universe.
Okay.
Honestly.
Interesting.
Like they just don't. The people that come into my universe are people that want to be better.
They want change.
Those people don't want to be better.
Oh, I guess that would make sense if they're coming to you because they want help and they want to progress. Yeah. Do you personally and with your clients, do you have them turn to a higher power or God? You do. Tell me about that.
I do. And it's interesting because there's so many definitions of higher power. I'm non-denominational as far as my clients' experience goes.
Sure.
I'm very Christian.
Yeah.
Right. When I ask them to, sometimes we do what we call a breakthrough process.
Sure.
Right. And in that process, I invite them to bring in a trusted support.
Okay.
In my mind, when I invite them to bring in trusted support, for me, I'm always channeling a higher power. But if you turn inward and upward at the same time, the answers are always there.
Okay, so when you say turn inward and upward, do you mean like you said, getting the mirror in front of your face and getting an accountability partner, but also relying on God?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when you say relying on God, does that mean praying every day or
not necessarily? For people, it looks different. And for me personally, my favorite space to live, I have this Venn diagram in my mind where there's this circle of spirituality and there's this circle of organized religion and then there's this circle of faith, and where they overlap is my favorite spot.
Okay.
That's my favorite spot. And that's what I hope to help everyone find is there. And people call it intuition in the religion I'm a part of. It's called the Holy Ghost. It's where you can push away any labels or definitions that people get hung up on. I've seen people be very bitter toward an organized religion or an organized religion God. But I don't want them to neglect the inspiration that's available to them.
Sure.
So I help them find that sweet spot, whatever you want to call it.
Sure. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's really cool that you can incorporate that too in helping people. I remember, so when I was first hearing your story, it was actually from your husband.
Oh, yeah.
And it was really cute, by the way, because the way he would talk about you was just, he was so proud.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was really, he's a really cool guy, by the way.
He's really cool.
But he was just saying like you had, been through a really tough situation financially and now you're in this, executive director of a multi-million-dollar foundation. Mm-hmm. And I mean, is that possible for people who are in a really tough situation? Is it really, really possible? Or, I mean, I don't know how to ask this. Let me think. I might be cutting some of this out. Okay, let me break it down like this.
Yeah.
So when I was younger, we didn't have money.
Yeah.
Growing up, we didn't have money at all. And so I always kind of, without even knowing it, kind of subconsciously just assumed like, oh, well, this is us and that's them. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, I'll probably, this is where I'll end up and that's where they'll end up. And that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah.
How does someone break through and actually like realize that you are capable of anything and everything? I wish I would have known that when I was younger,
you and me
because
both.
we all are. We're all of serious value and worth and of divine nature. Every single person. And so I don't know, I wish there was a way that I knew how to just express that to everyone.
Yeah.
And it's cool that you're doing something like that. What is something very concrete that they can just do right away to understand, to get started, first of all, and second of all, to understand that they have huge potential?
So the first thing I would recommend is I'm going to steal a title from a book that I love, written by Steve Young. It's called Surround Yourself with Greatness. It doesn't cost anything to surround yourself with greatness.
Yeah.
When we were in our little condo, little 850 square foot condo, that's probably the size of this living room plus your foyer. That was the size of our whole house, right?
Wow.
I remember just being exposed to people whose ideas I liked. And there were people irrelevant of financial situations, right? If I could be the dumbest kid in the room, that's the room I wanted to be in.
What would you tell the old you? Like, if you could go back and tell yourself when you're in the thick of it and it was really, really hard financially and otherwise, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
If I imagine going back in time, first thing is just run and scoop myself into a little ball and just breathe. And going back in time and saying, you are doing the right things. I know it's hard right now. Trust me, keep moving. The worst thing you can do right now is stop. So keep going.
Yeah.
You're almost there, and it's going to be better than you ever imagined.
Man, I wish everyone could know that.
I want to find the people that can hear that.
Yeah.
You know, I do every now and then I do these Instagram lives, and every now and then there's a image of someone. Sometimes it's a stranger, sometimes it's someone I've met, and I will just talk to them as if they were listening. I'll never know if they did. Yeah. But just the message of please don't give up. Please have faith. Keep going. Pursue relentlessly whatever you're designed, because if you can do that, if you can hone so specifically in on what you want, it has to come to you.
Yeah. I personally believe that there is a God who loves us, and He's our Father, and He knows each of us perfectly. And He loves us so much that He's aware of all of our shortcomings and our problems and all the things that we're suffering with. And that if we turn to Him completely and then also do what we can. So turning to Him through prayer and through trying to live good lives and be good people, genuinely good.
Yeah.
And then getting up and going to work. I've seen those miracles in my own life.
Yeah.
Just absolute miracles in my own life. But I mean, you have to also put in the work. And I don't believe God is some weird ethereal being like, you know, like all I have to do is ask for it and it will come. Well, I think you do have to put in some work.
You do. You just described the recipe, right?
Thanks.
You have to have faith, and then you have to get up and do it. That $100,000 did not fall on my lap.
What would your takeaway be? Let's say you're talking to someone right now. I'm a new client, and I'm telling you right now, I am in a horrible situation in every way, a horrible marriage. I can't seem to get out of this downward spiral. We're in tons of debt. I don't know how to make another dollar because every last dollar is going to our basic needs. What do I do?
If you and I were sitting down and that was a real case scenario, I would ask you, what is the number one limiting belief holding you back?
What if I said, I don't know?
And if you did know, what would it be?
That I think that I'm stuck.
You close your eyes, go back in time. What's the first memory that comes up for you when you have the thought, I'm stuck?
Interesting. Do people actually like have these memories come to the surface?
Every time.
Wow.
Without fail. And that feeling of stuck is a recurring theme because they made that lesson mean the wrong thing. They learned the wrong thing from that lesson. And so stuck has been a recurring theme for them.
That's so interesting. I'm going to go back and figure out what all my limiting beliefs
It's it's a hard journey, but it's so rewarding.
Yeah.
You know? And whenever you think of a goal, anything that you don't currently have, ask yourself why, and it will reveal the next limit.
You know, my husband says something like this all the time too. He's like, we are where we are because of our choices, which is so empowering. It's very empowering. It can be hard to come to that reality.
Right? It can.
But, you know, it's very empowering to know that you have a choice on how your life turns out. If someone wanted to be trained by you, I don't know if you call it training or not, but if someone wanted to meet you, how would they contact you?
I'm all over Instagram right now. Okay. That's my primary.
Marianne Hickman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can follow my link tree or whatever it is. You know, they request a coaching session or just DM me on Instagram. That's my favorite way right now.
Okay. So awesome. Okay. Thank you so much, Marianne.
Thank you. This is so fun.
Yeah, we get to do it again.